former president and current frontrunner for the 2024 Republican nomination, has been forced to deny reading and quoting Hitler's diatribe Mein Kampf. Donald Trump claimed this week that illegal immigrants are, quote, destroying the blood of our country. Joe Biden, meanwhile, has hit back and says this reminds us of the language coming out of Germany in the 30s. Now, all of this comes as the Colorado Supreme Court last night opened up an unprecedented legal sanction against Donald Trump, blocking the 45th president from appearing on the ballot for his role in the January 6th Capitol insurrection. It's a battle that will test the US Constitution to its limits, less than a year from what is arguably the most consequential election in modern American history. Joining me now is historian and author who's written extensively about Adolf Hitler, Professor Thomas Weber. Thank you so much for making time, sir. First of all, talk to us about the significance of this language, about blood and soil and immigrants, essentially, what Trump was sort of referring to and what people have alleged he was quoting from Mein Kampf. Talk to us about that language and where it stems from.
Thanks for having me. This really goes back to Hitler's main preoccupations, which is to figure out what Germany's weakness is, which he kind of saw as always described metaphorically as a body. And he really wanted to get the poison out of Germany, out of Germany's body. And he identified that with Jews, sometimes with immigration. And it's quite clear that that Donald Trump really is using clearly Hitlerian language. Whether or not he is fully aware that this is kind of straight up Mein Kampf, or whether he got it somewhere from a different source, which is perfectly plausible, is difficult to tell.
Okay, so whether or not, I mean, he's denied it. We've got to say this. Donald Trump has said, no, I'm not quoting Hitler. That's not what I intended to do. But of course, the Democrats and current President Joe Biden has leapt on the opportunity to say, look, the clear parallels are there. In terms of the parallels between the trajectories of Hitler and other populist leaders, if we can call Donald Trump one of those, what kind of hallmarks do you see that are similar?
I see more of the similarities in terms of political language, in terms of campaigning. I'm not convinced that generally fascism or Adolf Hitler is the best principle through which to look in order to make sense of Donald Trump, because ultimately Hitler thought that that a strong state was required to kind of tame the world, while Donald Trump ultimately thinks that nothing of that is possible. Ultimately, what Margaret Thatcher said, that there's no such thing as society, would apply far more to Donald Trump. So in terms of policy, they're extremely different. But in terms of political campaigning, in terms of turning against immigrants, and more generally in terms of having disregard for the Constitution, as well as for political traditions and what one may call pre-political values, they share a lot of similarities.
In terms of that policy point on immigrants and vilifying migrants, it's a theme that we see mirrored across European states, and especially here in the UK as well. Right-wing politicians tend to leap upon it to cause division or to stoke hatred and to create policy issues that they will hope to get re-elected on. How much of that was used by Hitler at the time? Again, I'm not making the comparison that all right-wing politicians that do this are like Hitler, but I'm interested to know the history of this. When did Hitler start doing that?
In a way, I really should say Hitler is really quite different there. I mean, he also does talk about foreign immigration, but generally when he talks about the poisoning or blood poisoning, he's really talking specifically about the Jews. And when he talks about immigration, he really talks about uncontrolled Jewish immigration from Eastern Europe, rather than immigration or illegal immigration more broadly. So in that sense, Trump is right that they mean something slightly different. Having said that, and again, Trump might not be aware of that, Hitler sometimes talked exactly the same way. There is a different section in Mein Kampf that has been quoted in recent days, where Hitler is precisely talking about the wrong kind of immigration, and there he's saying, well, what we really need to be doing is we need to get the kind of immigration policy that the Americans have, because they have a much better immigration policy. So in a way, Hitler was celebrating, or was seeing as a model there, an immigration policy to which now Donald Trump is also looking backwards. Again, that's not how Hitler most frequently talked about the issue, but there is, at least in Mein Kampf, he talked about it exactly the same way that Donald Trump now is looking or is hoping to revert to some US immigration policies of a bygone era, which is also what Hitler was pointing at the time as a model.
Professor Thomas Weber, thank you very much. Fascinating stuff.